It was a packed courtroom that morning, every seat filled with whispers running through the air, the kind of buzz that comes when something important is about to happen. All eyes shifted toward a young black man in a plain gray suit, sitting quietly at the front. His name was Marcus Reed, but to most people in that room, he looked like nothing more than another nervous defendant waiting for judgment. He shuffled his papers slowly, adjusted his tie, and kept his eyes down, almost as if he didn't belong there. And that was all the judge needed to see. Before we start, hit that like and subscribe button, then comment where you're watching from. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming. Judge Harlan, a man with decades of power behind his gavel, leaned back in his chair, peered over his glasses, and smirked. "Another one of you kids thinking you can play lawyer games in my courtroom," he said loudly enough for the jury to hear. A ripple of laughter spread through the courtroom. Even the bailiff cracked a grin. Marcus didn't react. He simply breathed deep, his expression calm. What no one in that room knew yet, what no one suspected, was that Marcus Reed wasn't who they thought he was. The defense attorney strutted into the courtroom, all arrogance and polished shoes, carrying a flashy briefcase that probably cost more than Marcus's entire suit. He greeted the judge with a handshake, whispered something that made the judge chuckle, then took his seat with a smug look. The trial began. The case was about corporate fraud, millions stolen from hardworking families who had trusted the wrong people. But from the moment Marcus stood up to speak, the judge interrupted him. "Son, do you even know how to conduct yourself in a courtroom?" the judge sneered. "This isn't a playground. If you want to play dress up, go do it somewhere else." The laughter came again, cruel and dismissive. But Marcus didn't flinch. He walked to the podium slowly, adjusted his papers, and spoke softly. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I know exactly how to conduct myself. And by the end of today, you'll know too." The words hung in the air. Silence crept in where laughter had been. The defense attorney rolled his eyes and began his arguments, talking over Marcus as though he were invisible. The judge nodded along, laughing at his jokes, brushing off Marcus's objections. It felt less like a trial and more like a private club. But when Marcus took the floor again, everything started to change. He picked up the remote, clicked a button, and suddenly the courtroom's projector lit up with documents, bank transfers, even secret recordings. Every piece of evidence was sharp, clear, undeniable. Whispers turned into gasps. The jury leaned forward. The defense attorney's smirk began to fade. Still, the judge laughed. "Where did you even get this, boy? You think you're Perry Mason? You're embarrassing yourself." Marcus didn't blink. He looked straight at the judge and said, "Your Honor, I'm not the defendant. I'm the lead prosecutor on this case." The words landed like a bomb. The gallery erupted. People gasped, jaws dropped, even the bailiff froze in place. The defense attorney sat up straight, color draining from his face. Judge Harlan's smirk evaporated. He stammered, adjusting his glasses, suddenly realizing he had mocked the very man who held the power to bring this entire case crashing down. Marcus's voice grew stronger now. "I've worked on this case for over a year. I followed the money trail. I interviewed the victims. I gathered every shred of evidence. And today, justice will be served. Not because of your jokes, not because of your bias, but because the truth demands it." The jury's eyes locked on him, captivated by his calm authority. The defense attorney scrambled, throwing up objections, but Marcus countered every one with precision. For the first time in that courtroom, the young man who had been underestimated all morning stood as the most powerful person in the room. Then came the twist. Among the mountain of evidence Marcus presented was a single transaction that stood out. A payment, large, suspicious, sent to an individual tied directly to the case. The defense attorney's hands shook as he flipped through his papers. The gallery buzzed with confusion. Marcus paused, letting the silence stretch, then spoke clearly. This payment wasn't just to the corporation. It was traced to an account belonging to someone inside this very courthouse. Every head turned. Eyes darted toward the defense, toward the bailiff, toward the clerks. Marcus looked up slowly and locked eyes with Judge Harlan. "Yes, Your Honor," he said, voice cold as steel. "This payment was traced to your private account. And the evidence suggests you've been protecting criminals like this defendant for years." The room exploded. Shouts, gasps, chaos. The bailiff froze, unsure who to obey. The jury looked horrified. Reporters scribbled frantically in their notebooks. Judge Harlan's face went white, sweat beading on his forehead. He slammed his gavel desperately, voice trembling. "Order! Order in my courtroom." But for the first time in decades, no one listened to him. Marcus stood tall, his calm composure now carrying the weight of justice. This was no longer the judge's courtroom. This was Marcus Reed's stage, and every lie, every prejudice, every sneer that had been thrown his way was unraveling in front of everyone's eyes. Judge Harlan's lips trembled as he pointed his gavel toward Marcus, but before he could speak, Marcus leaned forward and said, "This is just the beginning." The courtroom was no longer the judge's stage. The power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. What started as ridicule turned into silence, and now the silence was heavier than chains. The prosecutor, once mocked as a defendant, stood tall, every word slicing through the arrogance that had filled the room moments before. He revealed not only his position, but his story. A story that no one could ignore. He told them about the countless young men who had been dismissed, ridiculed, and silenced simply because of the color of their skin. He told them about doors that were slammed shut, promotions denied, voices drowned out by the gavel of prejudice. And yet, here he was, standing in the very system that tried to crush him, wielding the law as his weapon. The jury hung on every word, the defense attorney shifted uncomfortably, and the judge's smirk had completely vanished. But the tension didn't end there. The prosecutor wasn't just delivering a closing argument, he was unmasking a hidden truth. Behind the polished wood of the bench and the robe of authority, there were secrets. Secrets the judge thought no one would ever dare to expose. The prosecutor leaned in, his voice calm but sharp, and began to hint at something darker. Something about favors exchanged, verdicts twisted, and justice sold to the highest bidder. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, and the spectators leaned forward as if they had just realized they were witnessing more than a trial, they were watching a reckoning. The judge pounded the gavel desperately, trying to regain control. "Order in my court," he barked, but his voice betrayed the fear rising in his throat. The prosecutor didn't flinch. He looked straight into the judge's eyes, and for the first time, the robe no longer looked powerful. It looked like a mask. The prosecutor reached into his folder, pulling out documents no one expected, records, names, transactions. He began to read them aloud, each word unraveling the judge's carefully built reputation. The courtroom erupted, reporters scribbling furiously, cameras flashing. The judge's face turned pale, sweat dripping down his forehead. His world was crumbling, and there was no stopping it. But just when the truth was about to be laid bare, just when the prosecutor was about to read the final line that could destroy the judge's career forever, the lights flickered. Then suddenly, darkness. A blackout. Screams filled the room, papers scattered, chairs toppled. And in the chaos, a single thought echoed in everyone's mind. Was this an accident, or was someone trying to silence the truth before it came out? Comment below. Don't forget to follow, subscribe and turn on the notification button for part 2 because the truth is about to be exposed.